Support for this podcast comes from the law firm of Davis Malm. Whether you're a developer, property owner, manager, or commercial tenant, their real estate attorneys know the lay of the land, not just the law. Learn more at davismalm.com.
WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. Erika Adams, editor for Eater Boston, I have a question for you. To what restaurant in the Boston area would you give a Michelin star? Or 2, or 3?
Damn, I was not expecting this. Okay.
It's what we do, baby.
I know. Okay, so last time I was on, I talked about this restaurant called Mooncusser that I had had a really nice meal at. And if Boston had a Michelin guide, I could see this restaurant as a 1-star Michelin spot. It reminds me a lot of the 1-star Michelin dining that I did in New York. And it just has that like perfect blend of, it's a little fine dining, but it's experimental. It's not that high priced. The kitchen is clearly having a lot of fun back there and doing really experimental things. And it feels like a 1 Michelin star spot.
So shout out to Mooncusser. And where is Mooncusser again?
So Mooncusser is in Back Bay.
Back Bay. Okay. I have to go check that out. I'm overdue because we did talk about this before. I do remember. But Erika, we are not here to talk about Mooncusser, right?
We are not.
We are here to talk about an article you wrote last month where you answered the question, why doesn't Boston have any Michelin stars? Before we get into it, because I'm excited to talk about this, tell us about the Michelin Guide and why it's so prestigious.
Yes, the Michelin Guide. It's a very famous restaurant rating system now. It's usually connected to like the echelons of fine dining. It's the system, like when I talk about restaurant ratings, to people who don't necessarily always follow the food scene, in the way that I do as the editor of Eater, they know about the Michelin Guide. They might not have heard of James Beard. They might not have heard of some of these other award systems that exist in the industry, but a lot of people know about the Michelin Guide. It's owned by Michelin, the French tire company with the inflatable white mascot called the Michelin Man. This is the same company as the one that does the Michelin Guide. They launched the guidebook in the early 1900s as a marketing tool for their tires. It was to encourage people to go out on road trips and drive around and check out restaurants and hotels and use those tires. The guide started to get more popular as decades went on, and then they introduced this ranking system to the book where we get the Michelin Stars. And, over decades, it really took off into this behemoth that it is now. It's an international restaurant guide and ranking system. And so now in cities that the Michelin Guide covers, anonymous restaurant reviewers go around and they rank restaurants on a 1 to 3 star scale. And then they publish a list every year of which restaurants got stars, how many they got. There's this big awards ceremony in the cities where they do publish the guide. It's very big within the industry.
So, Erika, we're talking about this because a reader asked you a question about this for the Ask Eater column, right? Tell me, what did you find in answering them?
Yes. And I want to preface this too by saying the reason why I wanted to do this story was because I'm fairly new in this job, right? Like it's about 6 months old. And, when I would tell people what I do now in Boston, I kept getting this response of like, Boston's actually got a really great food scene, contrary to the stereotypes. We've all heard them. Boston's food scene is so boring, blah, blah, blah. And can you believe that Boston doesn't have any Michelin stars? And, the way that it was being prefaced to me by people who were saying this was that these two things are intertwined, right? Like this stereotype of Boston being a boring food city and Michelin like not ranking restaurants here, not deigning to look at Boston. So I was like, wait a minute, it's not really that Michelin doesn't think Boston's restaurants are worthy of a guide being published here. This is a business. Michelin is a publicly traded tire company. Tourism boards pay for Michelin to launch new guides in their cities. This happened in California. This happened in Florida. So I thought it was a worthy story to kind of get that out there. Like, why doesn't Boston have a Michelin guide? It's not that Boston doesn't have great restaurants. It's that Boston's tourism board hasn't paid for it.
Is it fair to call this a pay-for-play situation?
You know what? I would say that is how Meet Boston characterized it when I spoke with them for this story. So they used those words for that. So,
yeah, tell me about their reasons for, I guess, not paying to play.
yeah. In their view, it was a lot of money for what would potentially be only showcasing a small sliver of Boston's restaurants.
Yeah.
Potentially like furthering the stereotypes that we already, are combating against Boston scene, that it's really one note, or it's really, it's all pasta and lobster rolls. And, they were really worried about that. They were worried about it only focusing on the North End and Back Bay and not kind of expanding the scene in the way that they wanted from an advertising standpoint.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Did you kill Marlene Johnson?
I think you're one of the first people to have actually asked.
From WBUR and ZSP Media, this is Beyond All Repair, a new podcast about an unsolved murder that will leave you questioning everything.
Somebody should be in jail for murdering my sister.
A woman who's never been believed.
As long as they think I have done this, then they're not looking for who actually did this.
And that's what makes it a cold case.
No, it's a botched case.
And a search for the truth, once and for all.
Wow, it just gets more interesting.
Beyond All Repair. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
Be careful. You're digging in a place that's been very peaceful for a while.
Do it anyway. Dig.
And we're back. What do the local chefs themselves think about this?
I saw differing responses. I saw some chefs commenting on Instagram that was like, it was good that Meet Boston didn't want to pay to have Michelin Guide come in here. We didn't need them. Boston doesn't need them anyways. They like to see Meet Boston taking that stand. Other chefs felt differently. I since learned after the story came out that a group of chefs got together and approached Meet Boston to kind of reopen the conversation around wait a minute, maybe it is beneficial for the industry to have Michelin here. In their view, Michelin is a huge tourism driver, especially with international tourism. It brings a lot of dollars into restaurants. And then it also has an impact on talent within the industry and Boston's ability to attract chef talent and retain chef talent here.
Damn. So would the Michelin Guide make that much of a difference in boosting our reputation?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I can say, from an eater perspective and just, with the stories that the network does, Michelin coverage is always very popular with our readers. And so people clearly are clicking on these guides, want to see the restaurant rankings, want to see those systems. Eater also ran a story about Vancouver. They recently got a restaurant guide within the past year or two and kind of the impact on the restaurant scene after the guide came in. And, it's not all positive. Yeah, restaurants are kind of really scrambling. Some of the places, once they got on the guide, it really blew up their books. There's good and bad with it for sure.
Well, okay, so we don't have the Michelin Guide folks coming here to rate our restaurants, but we do have other awards, right? What are some other awards we should be aware of?
Sure. So we've got James Beard. And then on the local level, all the big media outlets do some form of restaurant recognition and awards every year. So, of course, Boston Magazine have Best of Boston. I love to see that list every year. Boston Globe, Deborah First rates, best new restaurants and her best dining experiences at the end of the year every year. And that's really exciting to see. And then, of course, Eater has its own award system. We do best new restaurants in the fall. Yeah, just the more attention on Boston's restaurants, the better, and the better to combat these stereotypes that exist.
I guess prior to this conversation, if you would have told me a restaurant got a Michelin star, I would have been like, oh, okay, I need to go check that place out, right? Is that really necessary, especially when there are other outlets, local outlets, that are telling us what restaurants are good to eat at,
Yes, I love that observation. And I think, that answer is going to be different for everyone. Some people really like following the Michelin Guide as they travel around to different cities. And that's their restaurant, rating system that they go to first. But I think having come from reporting in New York and seeing the stars come out every year, it was fun to watch that. But that was just one sliver of one outlet's opinion of the restaurant scene there. And it's not the end all of what a good restaurant is. Michelin is not the one arbiter of, saying that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that too. Is every restaurant they rate with a star, right? Are they hits, or is it just like you said, just one person's perspective, right? You might try this 1 or 3-star restaurant and be like, this food is trash,
Yes, you can absolutely still have that experience. And I have. And I think that's part of restaurant rankings overall. It's so subjective. And Michelin is not any better than any one other group at doing that, I mean, some people might think that they are. I don't know. But, maybe you would rather hear from Deborah First about her list, right? Because she's been in Boston scene for decades, and she's been reviewing restaurants here for a decade. Maybe somebody else does want to look at Michelin's because they did have a good experience at a 1 or 2-star or 3-star restaurant in some other city. And so they want to see what Michelin has to say here. It's very subjective and, everyone has an opinion about it.
Well, you know what, Erika? I trust you more than the Michelin Guide. So there's that.
Oh, Daryl, thank you.
And I give this interview, if I had to, I give this interview 3 Michelin stars. Boom.
Wow. Such high praise.
Well, Erika, thank you so much for coming through to the Common. As always, this has been awesome.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you wanted to talk about this. I had a great time.
That's editor for Eater Boston, Erika Adams. And that is our show for today. Thank you so very much for listening to The Common. What's your favorite restaurant? Michelin Star, no Michelin Star, who cares? Let us know. Hit us up on Instagram at WBUR-TheCommon or send us an email at thecommon@wbur.org. I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.